This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Well, let's see how protected we are as we run through the rest of the card here. We've got the NWA Florida Heavyweight Champion, Mike Rotundo, beating Ivan Koloff with Paul Jones with an inside cradle and a fast count from referee Earl Hebner. Of course, this happens with a fast count because they had just shoved Hebner, so he's retaliating here. Next up, though, boy, talk about Florida. Here we are. Kevin Sullivan picks up a win over Dory Funk Jr. in a Texas death match. Now, we've talked a little bit about Kevin Sullivan, and most of our listeners are familiar with Kevin Sullivan, the WCW version. But just speak to for a minute how over he was as the quote-unquote devil down in Florida.
He was the devil.
Yeah.
He is the devil. That's all that's all you have to say. And his style was all over the place. He could have never been in a single match that involved countouts or DQs, because every match he was ever in was a DQ and a countout. It had to be. Right?
No, I mean, blood and guts. No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying he was
all over through the audience, all over the building. There could be no rules, but that was just his style.
Talk to me a little bit about Dory Funk. We haven't spent any time really talking about Dory Funk. Dory Funk, man, no other way to say it. Just from a wrestling family, a freaking legend. And it's super cool to see him on the card here. A lot of the fans who listen to this show, though, only remember a much older Dory. But you go back and you ask somebody like Bruce Pritchard, who grew up on Texas wrestling and just thinks the Funks are gods, and you can't convince him that Dory Funk Jr. is not one of the greatest champions the world ever knew. What was your experience working with Dory? What could you take from his style? Did you get to pick his brain or spend any time with him? Just talk to us a bit about Dory Funk Jr., a name we don't hear about that often these days.
Number one, he was a world-class wrestler, professional wrestler, which meant he could work a hold, he could work a body part. And one match I would challenge our audience to go find, and it's got to be plenty of places, Mike Rotundo versus Dory Funk Jr. They went a lot of nights, 30 minutes on some of these cards that I was on down in Florida. And Mike Rotundo is a wrestler's wrestler, as we know. Those guys would have a slugfest and a wrestlefest and swapping holds and counters and all those things that there were no dives, there were no coming off the top, none of that stuff. It was mat wrestling, slugging it out, using those lifters. I love those things. I wish I could have thrown one. Those European uppercuts, they both used them as part of their offense. And it was just for a wrestler that was my style, which was I tried to pattern myself after Ole and a lot of the guys that could just, wrestle in the ring and swap some holes and stay on a body part and wear it down, all those things, the Anderson way. You have to respect and appreciate the Funks, Dory Funk and Terry Funk, because, that's the kind of stuff they did. And they would make you believe that a guy could grab a front face lock and he couldn't get out of it for 15 minutes. And they would make you believe. And those matches between Mike and him were some of the best of that type wrestling that I've ever seen. So find it. It's out there somewhere.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.